Hi, welcome to the Hurricane Utah Adult Religion class, sponsored by the Hurricane Utah North Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm Mike Parker, and since 2008, it's been my privilege to be the instructor for this class. The Hurricane Utah Adult Religion class meets on Thursday evenings between September and May to discuss the scriptures, teachings, and history of the restored Church of Jesus Christ. If you live in or are visiting the Hurricane St. George area, I'd love to have you join us. Time and location are available on the class website. There's a link to that in the show notes just below this video. Also on the class website, you can download my notes, which includes footnotes documenting my sources, this PowerPoint presentation, and handouts that I distribute in class. Please note that this YouTube channel and the class website are not official sites of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Hurricane Utah North Stake, or any other church unit or department. I alone am responsible for the content on these sites. What you're about to see is a recording of my notes for one of the lessons. If you enjoy this video, please click the like button and share it with a friend. And please feel free to subscribe if you'd like to be notified when new content is posted to this channel. My friends, the gospel of Jesus Christ is true. Joseph Smith was a prophet of God, and the authority and keys that he held are now vested in the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And most importantly, Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. I hope you enjoy this lesson.
This lesson covers the narratives recorded in the historical books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. As I discussed in last week's lesson on Daniel, after being the major power in the ancient Near East for only 70 years, the Neo-Babylonian Empire fell to the Achaemenid Persians in 539 BC. Many Jews had been in captive exile in Babylon since 587 BC, and some had been taken even earlier in 597. Most of the exiled Jews had been born in Babylon and had no memories of the land of Judah and the city of Jerusalem. To grant favor upon the peoples captured by the Babylonians, the Persian king Cyrus II, Cyrus the Great, decreed that all captive peoples could return to their homelands. Some Jews quickly left for Jerusalem. Most remained in Persian-controlled Babylon. The books in this lesson tell the stories of what happened to these two groups. Ezra and Nehemiah are a single book in the Hebrew Bible. These books continue the history of the people of Israel that ended with the book of 2 Chronicles. The narrative in 2 Chronicles ends with the capture of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 587. A postscript describes the release of the Jews under Persian King Cyrus 48 years later in 539. 2 Chronicles 36, verses 22 through 23, King James Version. Quote, "Now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord his God be with him, and let him go up." Unquote. The book of Ezra picks up right where 2 Chronicles left off. In fact, Ezra 1, verses 1 through 3a, is nearly identical to 2 Chronicles 36, verses 22 and 23. King Cyrus II of Persia permitted all peoples in exile in Babylonia to return to their homelands and ordered their sacred idols to be returned to the shrines from which they had been taken. His deeds were recorded on a clay cylinder that was discovered in the ruins of Babylon in 1879. In the record, Cyrus announced, quote, "As for the citizens of Babylon, whom Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon, had made subservient in a manner totally unsuited to them against the will of the gods, I released them from their weariness and loosened their burden. I returned to these sanctuaries on the other side of the Tigris River, sanctuaries founded in ancient times, the images that had been in them there, and I made their dwellings permanent. I also gathered all their people and returned to them their habitations." Unquote. The books of Ezra and Nehemiah cover a period of just over 100 years, from 538 to 532 BC. These books recorded the reestablishment of the exiled Jews as the Lord's people in Jerusalem and Judah, and continuing historical developments as more people returned from Babylon. As the people repented, purified themselves, and again began to live the law the Lord gave to Moses, the Lord made it possible for them to rebuild Jerusalem and its temple. The books also emphasize the historical and theological continuity between Israel before and after the exile. The Jews reestablished themselves as the Lord's people through covenant renewal, the restoration of the temple, the installation of priesthood officers, and a renewed emphasis on living God's law. These same practices also create a continuity between Jewish practices and the restored gospel in the latter days. No other major religion outside the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has emphasized the importance of the biblical concepts of revelation, priesthood offices, covenants, and the temple. Jews in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah tried to restore the revealed patterns of worship and organization, something Latter-day Saints can appreciate. At the end of the ministry of the prophet Isaiah, circa 701 BC, Jerusalem was a fortified city with walls surrounding the old city of David on the east and the Temple Mount, and a new wall built by King Hezekiah that encompassed the entire western hill. The city was about 200 acres, 0.31 square miles or 81 hectares, and had a population of around 25,000. In the summer of 587, following an 18-month siege, the Babylonians took Jerusalem, tore down its walls, and burned the city and the temple. When the first Jewish exiles returned to Jerusalem in 538, they found the city in ruins. Working under inspired leadership, they managed to rebuild and rededicate the temple in 515, and they finished rebuilding the walls around the old city of David in 445. Even after nearly 100 years of reconstruction, the city was much smaller than it had been at its height, about 42 acres, 0.065 square miles, or 17 hectares, with a population of only 4,500 within the city walls. The rebuilt temple was almost certainly more modest than Solomon's temple, whose interior walls have been overlaid with gold. Since the new temple was built on the foundations of the earlier temple, it probably had the same dimensions. Outlining the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra, chapters 1 through 4, took place between 538 and 520 BC. These chapters document the return of the first group of 42,360 exiles under the leadership of Zerubbabel and Jeshua. They began rebuilding the temple, but were hindered by oppression from the Samaritans. These events happened during the rule of King Cyrus II of Persia. Ezra 5 took place in 520 BC. The prophets Zechariah and Haggai prophesied and encouraged the completion of the temple project. Darius I was king of Persia. Ezra 6 took place 5 years later, in 515 BC. After 23 years of effort, and despite fierce opposition and delays, the Jews finished rebuilding the Jerusalem temple and rededicated it. They celebrated their first Passover in the new temple during the 6th year of Darius' reign. There is a long chronological break in the text at this point. The events of the book of Esther, 484 through 473 BC, took place during this time, during the reign of King Xerxes I of Persia. In Ezra 7 through 10, the story picks up 57 years later, 458 through 457 BC, with the return of the second group of exiles, 1,496 men, along with women and children, led by the scribe and priest Ezra, with the permission of King Artaxerxes I of Persia. After their arrival in Jerusalem, the people worshiped the Lord, and Ezra taught them the law of God. He forbade foreign marriages, and the people responded by repenting and divorcing their foreign wives. The ministry of the prophet Malachi probably took place during this time. The book of Nehemiah, up through 7 verse 4, took place between 445 and 432 BC, almost 100 years after Cyrus declared an end to their exile. A third group of Jews returned to Jerusalem under the leadership of Nehemiah, cupbearer of Persian king Artaxerxes I. Nehemiah had learned about the distress of the people in Jerusalem, prayed to the Lord, and obtained permission from Artaxerxes to rebuild the city walls. He spurred the people to accomplish the task despite external opposition and internal difficulties, and succeeded in rebuilding Jerusalem's walls in only 52 days. Nehemiah 7 verse 5 through 13 verse 31 took place in 432 BC. With the walls of the city rebuilt, Nehemiah admonished the people to obey the Lord. He reestablished the city guard, read and implemented the law, and celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles. The people repented and committed to obey the law. 10% of the people moved into Jerusalem, and the remainder lived in communities outside the wall. One way to read Ezra and Nehemiah is as a guide to dealing with opposition to building the kingdom of God. In these histories, the Jews attempted to restore the temple and the covenants and practices they had lost during the exile. We are likewise restoring covenants and practices, including temple ordinances, that were lost during the Great Apostasy. After their initial success in restoring the altar and sacrifices, the Jews encountered fierce opposition from the Samaritans. Likewise, after the initial successes in bringing forth the Book of Mormon, restoring the priesthood, and organizing the church, Latter-day Saints have experienced, and continue to experience, opposition from those who do not believe as we do. Before the internet, exposure to anti-Mormon claims was infrequent because one usually had to personally know someone who was critical of the church, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, etc. The internet radically changed this. People today rely on online searches to find information, and these search sites rank their results by popularity. The more traffic a site receives, and the larger the number of other sites that link to it, the higher that site will appear in a search engine's listing. Any member of the church with access to the internet, including youth and children, can easily stumble onto websites that are critical of the church. This can happen even when simply running an innocent web search while looking for ideas for a talk or a lesson. While opposition to the Church of Jesus Christ used to come primarily from fundamentalist Protestant Christians, most attacks on the church today come from secular atheists, whose goal is to destroy all religions and religious beliefs. Since there is virtually nothing we can do to shut down these sites or prevent youth, new members, and ourselves from running into this information, it's imperative that we arm ourselves spiritually and intellectually. Let's look at the opposition the Jews faced after the exile and see what we can learn from their experience that will help us deal with opposition in our day. Ezra 4, verses 11 through 16, English Standard Version, quote, "This is a copy of the letter that the Samaritans sent. To Artaxerxes the king, your servants, the men of the province beyond the river, send greeting. And now be it known to the king that the Jews who came up from you to us have gone to Jerusalem. They are rebuilding that rebellious and wicked city. They are finishing the walls and repairing the foundations. Now, be it known to the king that if this city is rebuilt and the walls finished, they will not pay tribute, custom, or toll, and the royal revenue will be impaired. Now, because we eat the salt of the palace, and it is not fitting for us to witness the king's dishonor, therefore we send and inform the king, in order that search may be made in the book of the records of your fathers. You will find in the book of the records and learn that this city is a rebellious city, hurtful to kings and provinces, and that sedition was stirred up in it from of old. That was why this city was laid waste. We make known to the king that if this city is rebuilt and its walls finished, you will then have no possession in the province beyond the river." Unquote. When the Samaritans saw that the returning Jews were planning to rebuild the temple and restore the Jerusalem's walls, they wrote to the king of Persia and asked him to order the work to stop. Their letter was full of falsehoods, including the claim that the Jews were planning to rebel. They persuaded the king to decree that the Jews must stop the reconstruction effort. This stalled the temple reconstruction project for 15 years. What should we do when false things are published about us, our beliefs, or our practices? Joseph Smith wrote under inspiration that we have an imperative duty to, quote, "gather up the libelous publications that are afloat, and all that are in the magazines and in the encyclopedias, and all the libelous histories that are published and are writing, and by whom," unquote. Why must we do this? Doctrine and Covenants 123, verses 12 through 15, quote, "For there are many yet on the earth among all sects, parties, and denominations, who are blinded by the subtle craftiness of men, whereby they lie in wait to deceive, and who are only kept from the truth because they know not where to find it. Therefore, that we should waste and wear out our lives in bringing to light all the hidden things of darkness, wherein we know them, and they are truly manifest from heaven. These should then be attended to with great earnestness. Let no man count them as small things, for there is much which lieth in futurity pertaining to the saints, which depends upon these things." Unquote. In other words, we have an imperative duty to respond when we have been falsely accused, so that we may protect members of the church and potential converts. Nehemiah 4, verses 1 through 3, English Standard Version, quote, "Now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And he said in the presence of his brothers and the army of Samaria, 'What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish, and burned ones at that?' Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, 'Yes, what they are building, if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall.'" Unquote. When the Samaritan leaders saw Nehemiah and his brethren attempting to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem, they mocked their efforts. Are Latter-day Saints the objects of mockery today? Absolutely. Allow me to give you just one example. Back at the end of 2006, Jacob Weisberg, editor-in-chief of the online news magazine Slate, wrote an opinion piece critical of the beliefs of then Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. At that time, Romney was considering a run for the U.S. presidency. Weisberg wrote, in part, quote, "I wouldn't vote for someone who truly believed in the founding whoppers of Mormonism. The LDS Church holds that Joseph Smith, directed by the angel Moroni, unearthed a book of golden plates buried in a hillside in western New York in 1827. Smith was able to dictate his translation of the Book of Mormon first by looking through diamond-encrusted decoder glasses, and then by burying his face in a hat with a brown rock at the bottom of it. He was an obvious con man. Romney has every right to believe in con men, but I want to know if he does, and if so, I don't want him running the country. One may object that all religious beliefs are irrational. What's the difference between Smith's seer stone and the virgin birth or the parting of the Red Sea? But Mormonism is different because it is based on such a transparent and recent fraud. Unquote. Notice that Mr. Weisberg didn't criticize Romney's political policies and acts in office. Those things are fair game and should be evaluated. Instead, he attacked Romney's Latter-day Saint religious beliefs. Certainly no intelligent person would fall for something as stupid as Mormonism. When our history and doctrines are distorted and ridiculed in this way, we have a duty to respond, to correct fallacies, and to affirm our beliefs. Nehemiah 6, verses 1 through 3, English Standard Version. Quote, Now, when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall, and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, Come, and let us meet together at Hakekpharim in the plain of Ono. But they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? Unquote. The Samaritans asked Nehemiah to come down from his work on the wall and talk to them. They surreptitiously wanted to harm him, though, or at the very least waste his time arguing with them instead of building. What should we do when we're invited to debate or argue about our beliefs? Elder Boyd K. Packer suggested the following response, quote, What should we do in the face of opposition that now confronts us? There is an answer in the Old Testament. When Nehemiah's enemies saw that the Jerusalem wall was nearly up and that it was strong, they became worried. Sanballat and Geshem invited Nehemiah to meet with them in one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But Nehemiah said, They thought to do me mischief. And I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease, whilst I leave it, and come down to you? Their defense was simple and effective. We made our prayer unto God, and set a watch against them, and then went about the work. And that is what we should do. Go about our work, strengthen the wards and the stakes, the quorums and the families, and the individual members. We have a work to do. Why should it cease while we do battle with our enemies? Set a watch and make a prayer, and go about the work of the Lord. Unquote. We should make our beliefs known and respond when we are misrepresented. But we shouldn't allow ourselves to be drawn into debates or other distractions that waste our time and efforts. There is a contemporary event not recorded in the scriptures. The Samaritans built a rival temple on Mount Gerizim and claimed that it was the real location of the Israelite temple that had been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. There are many groups, both formal and informal, who are made up of disaffected or former Latter-day Saints. They believe that so-called Mormonism is an experience from which one must recover, just like an abused spouse or child must emotionally recover from the mistreatment they've suffered. Many of these groups mock and attack the beliefs and practices of Latter-day Saints. They have many of the following characteristics in common. Writers often go by online pseudonyms. They do not give out their real names, so they cannot be held accountable for the things they write. They have an attitude of mocking and satirizing instead of engaging in thoughtful, reasoned discourse. They give particular focus to mocking the temple and its sacred ordinances. These are targets that they know will cause maximum offense to the saints. They collect exit stories that serve as anti-testimonies. Many of those who have left the church make claims such as, I was shocked when I found out the church had lied to me about X, or hidden its history about Y, or when I asked a question about Z, I was told to just pray about it. They express disdain for friends and relatives who won't abandon their faith, and share stories of supposed intolerance they've received from faithful friends and relatives. They have a sophomoric approach to church history. Many disaffected and former church members claim to know more about challenging issues in church history than believing Latter-day Saints do. These critics, however, are not interested in the context, depth, and complexity of history. They often believe a simplistic narrative that ascribes evil motives to historical church leaders. They have a hyper-fundamentalist approach to church doctrine. They often describe Latter-day Saint beliefs in their most extreme or radical versions, which makes it easier to mock and belittle them. They almost always reject God and organized religion. From my observation, most vocal critics don't convert from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to another religion. Instead, they embrace atheism and secular humanism. They compare the church to other groups that are harmful or unpopular. The saints are frequently lumped in with dangerous, subversive, and violent religious organizations. Some critics of the church have falsely asserted that Latter-day Saints are more inclined to violence because of their beliefs. They accuse church leaders of brainwashing or programming faithful members to keep them from thinking for themselves. According to this claim, all saints think alike and unquestioningly obey their leaders. Finally, enthusiastic comments encourage these behaviors. Our anonymous critics cheer on these tactics and repeat false claims, even though many of them have been debunked by defenders of the restored gospel. How can we deal with these attacks when we're exposed to them? And how can we help others who are struggling to maintain their testimonies? Church leaders have spoken about this. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland taught, quote, "When facing the challenge of faith, or in moments of fear or doubt or troubling times, hold the ground you have already won, even if that ground is limited. When those moments come and issues surface, the resolution of which is not immediately forthcoming, hold fast to what you already know and stand strong until additional knowledge comes." Jesus said, "If you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, Remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you." The size of your faith or the degree of your knowledge is not the issue. It is the integrity you demonstrate toward the faith you do have and the truth you already know. When problems come and questions arise, do not start your quest for faith by saying how much you do not have, leading, as it were, with your unbelief. That is like trying to stuff a turkey through the beak. Let me be clear on this point. I am not asking you to pretend to faith you do not have. I am asking you to be true to the faith you do have. Sometimes we act as if an honest declaration of doubt is a higher manifestation of moral courage than is an honest declaration of faith. It is not. Be as candid about your questions as you need to be. Life is full of them on one subject or another. But if you and your family want to be healed, don't let those questions stand in the way of faith working its miracle. Brothers and sisters, this is a divine work in process, with the manifestations and blessings of it abounding in every direction. So please don't hyperventilate if, from time to time, issues arise that need to be examined, understood, and resolved. They do, and they will. In this church, what we know will always trump what we do not know. And remember, in this world, everyone is to walk by faith. Last observation. When doubt or difficulty come, do not be afraid to ask for help. If we want it, humbly and honestly, we can get it. The scriptures phrase such earnest desire as being of real intent, pursued with full purpose of heart, acting no hypocrisy and no deception before God. I testify that in response to that kind of importuning, God will send help from both sides of the veil to strengthen our belief. Unquote. Then President Dieter F. Uchtdorf explained, quote, Some struggle with unanswered questions about things that have been done or said in the past. We openly acknowledge that in nearly 200 years of church history, along with an uninterrupted line of inspired, honorable, and divine events, there have been some things said and done that could cause people to question. Sometimes questions arise because we simply don't have all the information, and we just need a bit more patience. When the entire truth is eventually known, things that didn't make sense to us before will be resolved to our satisfaction. Sometimes there is a difference of opinion as to what facts really mean. A question that creates doubt in some can, after careful investigation, build faith in others. And, to be perfectly frank, there have been times when members or leaders in the church have simply made mistakes. There may have been things said or done that were not in harmony with our values, principles, or doctrine. I suppose the church would be perfect only if it were run by perfect beings. God is perfect, and his doctrine is pure, but he works through us, his imperfect children, and imperfect people make mistakes. To those who have separated themselves from the church, I say, my dear friends, there is yet a place for you here. Come and add your talents, gifts, and energies to ours. We will all become better as a result. Some might ask, but what about my doubts? It's natural to have questions. The acorn of honest inquiry has often sprouted and matured into a great oak of understanding. There are few members of the church who, at one time or another, have not wrestled with serious or sensitive questions. One of the purposes of the church is to nurture and cultivate the seed of faith, even in the sometimes sandy soil of doubt and uncertainty. Faith is to hope for things which are not seen, but which are true. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, my dear friends, please, first doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. We must never allow doubt to hold us prisoner and keep us from the divine love, peace, and gifts that come through faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Unquote. Because the Jews in Ezra and Nehemiah's time persevered, kept the commandments, and purified themselves, they were successful in completing the reconstruction of the temple and the city walls. If we likewise persevere, keep the commandments, and purify ourselves, we will be successful in building the kingdom of God. Turning now to the book of Esther. Esther is the last of 5 books gathered as a collection and called Hamesh Megillot, the 5 scrolls. These books are a collection within the part of the Old Testament called Ketuvim, the writings. These books are read at Jewish religious feasts. The Song of Solomon is read at Passover, which takes place in March or April, and celebrates the angel of death passing over the children of Israel in Egypt. Ruth is read at Pentecost, which falls in May or June. This is an agricultural festival held 50 days after Passover. Lamentations is read on the 9th of Av, which comes in July or August, and commemorates the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians and the second temple by the Romans. Ecclesiastes is read at Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, in late September or October. This commemorates the Exodus by building huts of branches and living in them for 5 days. Finally, Esther is read at Purim, which falls in February or March and celebrates Esther saving the Jews from annihilation in Persia. 4 of these 5 Jewish religious feasts have something to do with destruction or exile, which says a lot about Jewish identity. Those events are important to Jewish religious observance. Their annual remembrance of them is one reason they, as a people, have managed to survive thousands of years of persecution. One of the most striking things about the book of Esther is that it does not refer to God at all, either by name or title, though it is clearly about how God saved his people. Likewise, apart from fasting, there is no mention in Esther of basic concepts such as prayer, the law, the temple, sacrifice, or covenants. The events recorded in the book of Esther took place in Susa, capital of the Persian Empire, more than 5 decades after the Babylonians had been overthrown and some Jews had already returned to Jerusalem. There are 5 main characters in the story. King Ahasuerus is usually identified with the Persian king Xerxes I, who reigned 486 through 465 BC. The story of Esther took place between 484 and 473, from the 3rd year to the 12th year of his reign. Queen Vashti, Ahasuerus' wife. Esther, a young Jewish woman. Mordecai, Esther's cousin and adopted father. He appears to have been a man of some importance within the Jewish community at Susa. Haman, the highest official in the king's administration, similar to a prime minister. Summarizing the story. Chapter 1. At a lengthy and lavish feast, King Ahasuerus of Persia decided to display his abundant wealth. He called Queen Vashti to show off her beauty to the people, but she refused to appear. On the council of his advisors, the king had Vashti demoted and banished from his presence, and a new queen sought to replace her. Chapter 2. Many young women, including Esther, were taken into the king's harem and given an extensive 12-month beauty treatment. After sleeping his way through most of the candidates, the king chose Esther to be his queen. Esther was a Jew, a fact she kept hidden from the king. When Esther's cousin and adopted father, Mordecai, learned of an assassination plot against the king, he conveyed the information to Esther, who warned the king. The plot was foiled, but Mordecai went unrecognized and unrewarded for his actions. Chapter 3. Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman, the king's new chief official. Haman was incensed by this insult to his dignity and plotted to annihilate all Jews in the kingdom. Chapter 4. Mordecai called on Esther to intercede with the king to save her people. The king did not know that Esther was a Jew, so she had no idea of how the king would respond to her request. Mordecai gave her his counsel. Esther 4, verses 13 through 14, New English Translation. Quote, Mordecai said to take back this answer to Esther. Don't imagine that because you are part of the king's household, you will be the one Jew who will escape. If you keep quiet at this time, liberation and protection for the Jews will appear from another source, while you and your father's household perish. It may very well be that you have achieved royal status for such a time as this. Unquote. Mordecai's counsel is the message of the book of Esther. God sometimes places us in situations where we can use our influence to bless or help others. This isn't fate or destiny, but rather an opportunity to prove if we will be faithful when it really matters. Esther agreed to appeal to the king. Before doing so, she asked Mordecai to call a fast in the Jewish community on her behalf. She went to her task, prepared to accept the consequences, declaring, "If I perish, I perish." Chapter 5. Esther approached the king and invited him and Haman to a banquet. Meanwhile, Haman's hatred for Mordecai continued to grow, and acting on the advice of his friends and his wife, he had a special execution platform prepared outside his house, upon which he intended to impale Mordecai. Chapter 6. That night the king could not sleep, so he asked for the record books to be read aloud to him. Apparently, the fastest way to fall asleep is by listening to government records read aloud to you. The king learned that Mordecai was responsible for thwarting the assassination plot, but never received any reward or recognition for his actions. The king called for Haman and asked him what should be done to a man whom the king wants to honor. Haman, in his arrogance, thought the king was referring to him and recommended that a lavish public display of wealth and honor be bestowed upon the man. The king then ordered Haman to do this for Mordecai. The story doesn't mention Haman's response to the king's order, but he must have been thoroughly humiliated. It does mention, though, the ominous prophecy of Haman's wife. Thou shalt not prevail against Mordecai, but shalt surely fall before him. Chapter 7. At another private banquet the following day, Esther revealed to the king that she was a Jew, and that Haman had plotted to kill her people. Finding himself alone with Esther, Haman threw himself onto her couch and pled for mercy. At that moment, the king came into her room and thought Haman was trying to sexually assault her. So he had Haman put to death on the execution scaffold Haman himself had built for Mordecai. Chapters 8 through 10. All the Jews were saved. Mordecai was elevated to Haman's position, and Haman's estate was given to Esther. Haman's children were put to death, and the Jews avenged themselves of their enemies. Since that day, Jews have memorialized their salvation by celebrating the Feast of Purim. There are noticeably few stories in the scriptures that are about women. Esther stands out because she was a woman not just of great beauty, but also of great moral courage. She used her circumstances, position, and insight to protect her people from destruction at the hands of a wicked man. That concludes this lesson. If you enjoyed it, please click the thumbs up button and leave a comment below. Please subscribe if you'd like to be notified when new lessons are posted to this channel, and visit www.huarc.org to download these notes and this slideshow. In the next lesson, I'll discuss the oracles of the last 3 Old Testament prophets, whose ministries took place during the reconstruction of Jerusalem after the exile. The reading is the books of Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. See you next time.